Ruth Kennedy from FM 104 is here to look at now what's happening in tomorrow's news agenda. A story just breaking this evening, Ruth. The chairman of the Water Commission, Joe O'Toole, he's under pressure to resign tonight. Tell us why.
Yeah, so apparently he did some media interviews where he challenged Paul Murphy's left-wing credentials. He said he was surprised that somebody who is left-wing could, be against paying for water charges. And this kind of seems to go back to there's a fight in Irish politics between who's more left-wing. It reminds me of that incident with Bertie Ahern and Joe Higgins, where Bertie Ahern declared himself to be an out-and-out socialist, only that he wasn't. Whatever. I mean, it's an ongoing battle. In any case, it seems to be coming quite bitter. Paul Murphy has started a hashtag on Twitter calling for Joe to resign. And Fianna Fáil have now weighed in, and Barry Cowan has issued a statement just to get it right, not calling for the resignation of Joe O'Toole, but he says he wants him to reflect on his ongoing suitability for the position. Because Joe O'Toole apparently is a declared water charge payer. And I mean, you have to either pay or not pay. I mean, whoever was going to be heading up the commission is going to be either a payer or a non-payer. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be biased one way or the other.
Did he say he was in favour of water charges and the whole polluter pays principle?
As far as I know,
he stole around
pretty much.
They're taking issue with that.
He did in principle, but again, it's like with anything, you can have an opinion, and it doesn't necessarily mean. I'm sure judges have opinions about things, and their judgment is still valuable, and impartial. I'm sure, in any case, Paul Murphy's taking an exception to this.
Well, with all the Brexit stuff that's flying around at the moment, we forget that life goes on here, and it could be a bit of a headache for the Taoiseach tomorrow, because three Independent Alliance TDs have indicated that they might vote against the government in the FOETAL Abnormalities bill. How do you think that will go down?
Yeah, so this bill is causing a lot of trouble. I think Mick Wallace is trying to push the agenda. He's kind of trumping the whole notion of the Citizens' Assembly. I think there's broad agreement within the government that they want to wait for the Citizens' Assembly, irrespective of what people's positions are. Shane Ross is quoted in today's paper saying that repeal the 8th is not part of the government's, the programme for government as such, but certainly to have this assembly is, and what they want in government generally is for people to wait until this has happened. But this bill is forcing their hand, really. And what's happened is that three of the independents who are involved in the government, so Shane Ross, Finian McGrath and John Halligan, have all pretty much declared that they're going to vote with Mick Wallace. As far as I understand, Catherine Spone is going to wait, even though I think she's in favour of repeal the 8th. I think she's ready to wait for the discussions.
And Fianna Fáil, of course, have the free vote on it. Interesting to see where it goes. Moving on to Console now. The interim CEO of the suicide charity, David Hall, has had access to this storage unit. And we'll find out the contents of that tomorrow. The case is also back in the High Court tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, so it's pretty dramatic stuff. I mean, he seems to be, he's very at pains to stress earlier in an interview today. I heard him on a radio interview today saying that the organisation in itself was a brilliant organisation, that the staff were very loyal and that they had been betrayed, but that they had all turned up for work. And he was very much at pains to suggest that the work was excellent and that the helpline was still open. So I think that's important to remind people of that. He's going to stay up all night, apparently preparing financial statements and inventories for the High Court tomorrow, so that there'll be a clear position of what's happening, what there is.
Very briefly, Ruth, we know that Social Justice Ireland are going to be launching their briefing on poverty and inequality in the country. It's bound to make for some stark reading.
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, the actual figures will come out tomorrow. We'll have the figures tomorrow. There's an embargo on them up until then, but it looks like the situation is worse, since, in spite of the recovery. And housing has got to be part of that. I mean, you had an item earlier on the Focus Ireland, housing, and certainly people's income in relation to housing is something that's going to be an ongoing issue.
Okay, Ruth Kennedy, a pleasure as always. Thanks very much indeed. That is the way things look on Ireland Live News at 10 for the moment. UTV.ie will keep you up to date overnight, or on Twitter at UTV Ireland. The weather's next. From all of us here, have a very good night.
Good night.